Hello everyone, and welcome to a new video. Recently I had the chance to see a pretty unusual BNSF railway freight train of sorts. This was a locomotive scrap train, a set of 10 diesel engines built between the mid-1950s and early 1990s that had reached the end of their service lives and were now being moved out of long-term storage at the BNSF Interbay Yard in Seattle. They were purchased by a short-line railroad in Centralia, Washington known as Rainier Rail. These locomotives are currently in very poor condition, so it is expected that Rainier Rail will part them out for any usable components and then recycle the frames as scrap metal. Not only was this train a rare sight for me because it was the first time I'd ever seen locomotives being moved to scrap, but I had also witnessed about half of these locomotives pulling freight trains within the last decade, back when they were all still operable. Today, I want to show you this rare scrap train and talk about all the locomotives on it as a final send-off for these classic diesels, all of which were built by the Electromotive division of General Motors. Before I get too deep into the scrap train itself, I want to give you a little bit of background on Interbay Yard, where the locomotives were previously stored. For those of you not familiar with the area, Interbay is a rail yard owned by BNSF located on the north side of Seattle. It dates back to BNSF predecessor Great Northern Railway and the company's arrival into Seattle in the late 1800s. In more recent times, it has also been referred to as Balmer Yard after former Great Northern Railway Vice President Thomas Balmer. The yard consists of storage tracks and a rail car repair facility on the west side, and a locomotive repair facility on the northeast corner, including the 1929 vintage Great Northern Roundhouse and turntable. This is the last surviving large roundhouse in Washington state, and one of the only ones still standing that's owned by a major railroad. While Interbay was at one time a busy place, use of the yard has been greatly scaled back over the last decade. Like many other freight railroads in recent years, BNSF has looked to decrease the number of active locomotive shops on its system as a way of cutting costs. As a response to directives from upper management, BNSF has moved almost all of its locomotive servicing work in the Northwest down to Vancouver, Washington, with a new facility opening there in 2021. Operations at Interbay dwindled until the locomotive repair facility was shut down completely in June of 2025. Many different proposals for use of this site have materialized over the years. Back in the 1990s, it was planned as a potential station location for the upcoming Sounder commuter train North Line. That plan never came to fruition. More recently, it has been proposed as a yard and station stop for the Link Light Rail Ballard Line. In mid-2026, plans for the site were very much still up in the air. My first visit to Interbay Yard was in May of 2021. At that time, the yard was still an active place, with several locomotives stored and waiting for their turn in the shops. Many of the locomotives seen in these scenes were in fact repaired and put back into service. Fast forward to January of 2026, and the scene was very different. All buildings were closed up, and the line of locomotives still stored on site had been vandalized and stripped of many parts. With the end of operations at the engine servicing facility, BNSF began making plans to clear out the remaining 22 locomotives at Interbay. The units were sold to Rainier Rail for scrap, and, after several months of planning, 10 of the locomotives were finally approved for shipment south to Centralia. After a few false starts, the initial locomotive move was scheduled for April 13th, 2026. With a heads up from some of my friends, I headed south quickly to see this one-of-a-kind train and give several of these locomotives that I had seen many times in the past a proper final farewell. I arrived at Interbay on a rainy April 13th at about 9:30 in the morning. The move was scheduled to run under the designation of DINB-CEW. D is the letter BNSF typically uses to denote locomotive movements, INB is for Interbay, and CEW for Centralia, Washington. The crew was on duty early in the morning for this move. First, they would pick up a set of 3 functional locomotives at BNSF's Stacy Yard in South Seattle, and then proceed north to Interbay to build the train. While the crew was busy bringing their locomotives north to Interbay, I got some last views of the engines in the yard awaiting their final movement. the crew arrived with their 3 General Electric locomotives at 11 a.m., 2 -9 types, and 1 ES-44C4. Before they got to work assembling the train, a few other trains passed by. First was the Seattle-bound Empire Builder Train 7. Right on the heels of the Empire Builder, Amtrak Cascades Train 517 from Vancouver, BC to Portland came through with a Talgo train set. Finally, the Everett to Roosevelt, Washington loaded garbage train passed through the yard and under the Dravis Street Bridge. The crew of the scrap locomotive train got to work moving locomotives around. With locomotives stored on several different tracks, it took the crew a while to go through everything. First, the 12 locomotives that would be staying behind at Interbay were all gathered together and set on a track by the engine sanding towers. There were several interesting locomotives in this group. First out was BNSF 2826, a GP39M type locomotive that was rebuilt from a GP30 unit. Unlike most of these rebuilds, 2826 retained its original cab design that was unique to the GP30 series. I saw this locomotive once in the summer of 2020 on a Vancouver, BC to Everett, Washington mixed freight. Behind the 2826 was a very rare locomotive, BNSF 1551. The 1551 is an SD9-3 originally built for the Burlington route in 1954. It has the distinction of being the last SD9 to work for a Class 1 railroad. Up until a few years ago, it was used in Seattle as a yard switcher. BNSF upgraded the unit plus a few of their other SD9s with newer electronics. They also chopped the nose of the locomotive to improve forward visibility for the crew. Next in line was GP60B unit number 330. This unit used to operate regularly in western Washington. My earliest record of seeing this locomotive that I've been able to find goes all the way back to the summer of 2008 when I captured it on an intermodal train at the Fullerton train station in California. Several years later, in 2018, I saw the locomotive on an Everett to Longview, Washington mixed freight. Behind the 330 was another unusual piece of equipment, BNSF 60. The 60 is technically not a locomotive at all. Rather, it is known as a road slug. Slug units contain electric traction motors but no onboard diesel engine. They cannot move independently. Power is supplied from a connecting locomotive by way of heavy-duty cables. Road slugs were once common on many railroads, especially in rail yards, but their use has declined over the last few decades. BNSF 60 was rebuilt from a Colorado and Southern SD9 by BNSF predecessor Burlington Northern. After the road slug was an end cap switcher, SW1200 type 3534. This little switcher was built in 1956 for the Northern Pacific Railroad. The crew began to shove the 12 locomotive set back onto another track, giving me a glimpse at two more SD9 locomotives, numbers 1729 and 1732. 1729 was originally built for the Great Northern and 1732 for the Colorado and Southern. While I had never seen these particular two units in service, I had seen locomotives 6198 and 6125 on a freight train in Olympia, Washington back in June of 2003. 6125 is now at the Inland Northwest Rail Museum. 5 more units were coupled up behind the SD9s, BNSF 2079, 2136, 2133, 2085, and 2112. The 2079 and 2085 were GP38-2s, and the other 3 were of type GP38AC. Now well into the afternoon, the crew began gathering the 10 locomotives that were set to be shipped to Centralia. The years had not been kind for the locomotives at Interbay, with some units even missing air brake system components. Locomotive 2339 was in such bad shape that the locomotive's airlines had to be bypassed entirely. This GP38-2 was built for the Frisco Railroad in 1972. A little red and black SW1200 was positioned behind the 2339 in the consist. This little locomotive, nicknamed Freckles, was built for the Missouri Pacific Railroad in 1965. It later moved to the Washington Central Railroad and was given its current number of 202. BNSF acquired part of the Washington Central in the 1990s along with Locomotive 202. It eventually became the shop switcher locomotive for the Interbay Roundhouse. Included in the set of 10 locomotives to be shipped were 3 more GP60B units, all built for the Santa Fe Railroad in 1991. The first, number 326, I had seen many times over the last several years. Like many of the other units here, this locomotive was assigned to Everett Yard and ran consistently on short-haul mixed freight trains. I saw it over a dozen times on the Everett to Custer and Everett to Sumas manifest freights. My last sightings of it were in mid-2021, just months before it was placed into storage. The other 2 GP60B units included in this batch were the 340 and the 331. I saw 340 back in the summer of 2019 on the Everett to Custer mixed freight. Behind the 326 was the second of 3 GP38-2s, number 2334. This was another former Frisco unit built in 1972. 2334 was still wearing its former Burlington Northern green and black paint job. Next in line was BNSF 1513, designated as type GP28M. The GP28s were all rebuilt from older locomotives. In the case of the 1513, it was originally a Great Northern GP9, built in 1956. While I had not seen this particular locomotive before, I had seen GP28M number 1507, which was rebuilt from a Northern Pacific unit. A little after 4 p.m., the train was finally assembled and pulled up to the signal to await permission from the dispatcher to proceed south. 2 groups of 5 engines had been assembled, with the ES-44 in the lead, one -9 in the middle, and another -9 on the rear for braking purposes. With the locomotives in the state they were in, the train was limited to a top speed of just 30 miles per hour. It was a strange sensation seeing all these locomotives in this condition, especially considering I had seen half of them in regular service just a few years ago. One of the locomotives I had a soft spot for in particular was SD40-2 number 1664. Another unit regularly assigned to Everett, I had seen this locomotive several times both north and south of Seattle. Only on one occasion did I catch the unit leading, pulling the Everett to Roosevelt trash train in the spring of 2020. Like many of the other units seen here, it was initially parked at Interbay in relatively good condition, awaiting a fix before it could return to service. That day, unfortunately, never came for the 1664. Another unit I had previously seen in operation was GP38-2 number 2336. I caught this locomotive back in the summer of 2017 in Steilacoom, Washington, leading a local freight train. Quite a change from the locomotive's 2026 appearance. 2336 was coupled to GP38AC number 2123. This is yet another former Frisco locomotive built in 1971. After waiting several more hours for a new train crew to arrive and for other train traffic to clear, the scrap train finally departed Interbay at 7 p.m. I zipped down south to catch the train for a second time in the fading light at Kent. As I arrived, a northbound coal train came by. The coal train barely cleared before the southbound made its way through. About 6 years prior, I captured locomotive 1664 pulling the loaded garbage train through Kent. It was a strange contrast to now see this locomotive at the same location in such a state of disrepair and likely headed down the line on its final trip. With just a little bit of light remaining, I made one final leap ahead of the train to catch it passing the Sounder commuter station in Puyallup. The clouds to the west parted just enough to provide a glimpse into the evening sky, as if to say one last goodbye to these old reliable workhorses. As the echoes of the horn bouncing off the valley grew quiet, I powered down my equipment and headed north. Hey everyone, thanks for joining me to see this unique train. A big thanks to my friends Matt and Alex for letting me know about this special train. Alex posts a lot of other great Pacific Northwest train videos on his At the Crossing Productions YouTube channel, so be sure to stop by and take a look. What was your favorite locomotive at Interbay? Let me know by posting a comment in the comment section. As always, a special thanks to all my supporters on Patreon. To receive notifications whenever I post to YouTube, click on the subscribe button and ring the notification bell. I'll be back next Friday at 9 a.m. Pacific Time with an all-new railroading adventure right here on the YouTube channel. That's it for now. Until next time, I'm Mike Armstrong. I'll see you down the line. Thanks for watching.